Hey guys, okay, so work continues here on the 48. I've gone ahead and got it up on stands. I pulled all the wire harness out of it and got the straight pipe exhaust out of it, which was kind of a pain in the ass. The hangers were all welded, so they were bolt-in hangers, but the guy, whoever installed the straight pipes, decided to tack all the nuts on the hangers so that the nuts wouldn't vibrate loose. I understand why he did that, but that's not really what I would have done. But so I wasn't able to just unbolt all the hangers and remove the exhaust. I had to cut a couple of the hangers and cut the exhaust in half midway so I could fish it out over the axle. But I was able to get it out. So here we are. Okay, so that's the transmission and the rear output of the transmission. Back to the axle housing. The rear end, rear axle is physically connected to the transmission with a housing, and the benefits of that are, you know, you don't have to worry about axle wraps so much with a leaf spring rear suspension because the torque tube handles the torque when you apply rotational force to the axle, either by braking or by getting on the throttle hard and putting a lot of input into the input shaft of the rear end. The torque from acceleration and braking is handled by the torque tube, so it's actually a kind of a plus. But in today's modern times, it's not very serviceable. You know, everything's enclosed inside this tube, and it leaks a lot. There's a lot of seals along that tube that, in this case, being 7 years old, it's leaking. So we're going to remove all that, put a modern drive line in it with a couple of serviceable U-joints that you'll be able to grease, and a regular modern rear axle. Alright guys, so we're going to disconnect the torque tube here from the transmission. I already pulled the bolts out of the cover and slid the cover back, and realized I needed to get a drain pan at that point because I didn't have one. I wasn't expecting it to be full of gear oil. So let's see what we got here. Here I've got the slip yoke cover pulled back, and you can see the U-joint inside there. Pretty standard fare U-joint 4-cap screws. I'm going to try and get those from inside the cab, and I'm going to reposition us here and try and get that U-joint disconnected so that we can continue yanking this transmission motor out of here. Alright, so the last video we did here was getting that U-joint disconnected inside the torque tube. What I'm going to do right now is my client wants to keep the spirit of the truck, you know, and I'm all for that. You know, I feel like these old vehicles have some soul to them, and you know, I don't want to just gut the thing and make it a 94 truck with the old body on it. That's not my objective here. So one of the things he mentioned that he wanted to keep was the shifter, and the shifter in this truck, let me show you. It's got this great, nice, long, you know, vintage shifter, old, you know, manually bent shifter from 48 that somebody, you know, probably put that thing in a press and bent a million of them, you know, 10,000 of them, or however many of these trucks they produce. So I want to keep the shifter for the new transmission. So I'm just going to take my angle grinder and cut that thing off, and solves two problems really in 30 seconds here of grinding. So I'm going to mute the audio so you guys don't have to listen to that thing spin, but I'll go ahead and set you down here, and we'll cut this thing off and move forward. Well guys, I said when I started the channel that I would post the wins, the losses, and the draws. And man, unfortunately, the objective of me cutting the shifter off was to keep the shifter intact, so we could use it in with the new transmission. And when I cut the end off of it, you probably saw it drop through the opening in the floor. And I didn't think much of it till I climbed under there and saw that I had put a giant hole in the side of the shift knob. Not very happy about that. My intention was to leave the knob exactly as it was in the old truck with the new tranny. So I'm pretty bummed about that, but I should have grabbed it before I finished cutting through, and held it as I cut the rest of it through. My mistake. But what I'm going to do is I have all the pieces. There's 4 pieces that came out of this hole here. I've got the pieces. I'm going to clean them up. I'm going to clean the inside of this shift knob out, and what I plan to do is fill it with epoxy. So I'm going to mix up a bunch of epoxy resin. I had assumed this was solid. I didn't know it was a plastic knob, but I'm going to fill it with epoxy, make it solid, and when I get this surface full of epoxy, then I'll take the pieces that broke off, place them in here, and tape them into place so that they can bond to the epoxy as it sets. And once that sets, then we'll have a good solid shift knob with a little bit more character. So I think it's going to be fine. I'll sand it a little bit. I don't want to take off too much of the paint that's on here because I think it adds character and some history. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer, but I'm gonna try and make it right. So just wanted to share that with you guys.